Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, I am here, but I am kind of lurking today in the middle of 100 things.
No worries. I spoke to Bradley earlier and he asked me to host this one. So, yeah, I will do my best. Although there really aren't any specific topics to talk about, so this one's going to be pretty open.
That should make it interesting. It's just one of those weeks for me. Everything hit at once.
Just going to give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get off, I guess. Okay, we are 4 minutes over the start. I guess we're good to officially kick it off. For those who don't know me, hi, my name is Luis. I'm a lead engineer at Sky. And I work on Peacock and Now clients for Roku. And the reason I'm hosting today is Scott is a little bit busy. And Brunley and Chris are also not attending. And Brunley talked to me and asked me, would you like to host? And I said, sure. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Today, there aren't any specific topics in mind. Usually we do have like someone prepares a presentation or we have a specific theme for the meetup. Today, it's pretty open. There really isn't anything on the agenda. So we're just going to do it as free flow, I guess. So any questions that you guys might have, we can talk about them. And yeah. We are now officially kicked off. So who has anything to talked about, or that they would like to talk about. There's not a lot of us here, so.
I was thinking of the multi-line changes, or like the line continuation changes. Could someone walk me through what those are? Like what are the new changes that BrightScript allows with the multi-line and line continuation stuff?
That's very good timing because Luke just joined. So, hey, Luke.
Sorry, I didn't get that question.
Oh, I was just asking about the new line continuation stuff in BrightScript, like what has changed and what is now allowed and that sort of stuff.
So it should mean that you can put a new line anywhere that you could have put, I think, white space. Do I mean white space? I know, not anywhere you can put, anywhere where it would have been reasonable to put a new line. So basically, the lexical analyzer now knows to, or the grammar now knows to consume new lines in various places. So I think if you go look at, I think the documentation has probably a more coherent explanation than I've got. But it generally means that you can do the kind of obvious things that you'd have thought ought to work will generally work. It doesn't change the language at all. So there are no new language features as a result of it. But you can just do sub foo, open bracket, new line, foo, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, or whatever.
And what version of what OS version was this added in?
It's in 15.3.
15.3. Okay. All right. Cool. I don't have a device with that yet.
Yeah, 15.3. I think if you are on the beta program, then you might get a 15.3.
Okay.
And my understanding from the release team's sort of announcements is it's coming out to sort of general release at the end of July or middle of July, sometime around then.
Okay. Cool. I want to update the formatter that a lot of people are using, like the one built into VS Code and so on, to support that. So,
yeah, from the BrighterScript compiler side of things, I was the one who originally worked on the support for that for our parser.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So originally it was under a feature flag if you wanted to use it with .brs files, and BrighterScript would just eat it and not complain. But since then, I think Chris has done a little bit of work, and a new flag or a new option has been introduced in the BS config options for specifying what your minimum firmware version is.
Right. So
if you set it like below 15.3, then you won't be able to use that feature in vanilla BrightScript files. So yeah, if you're using BrighterScript above 0.72, I would risk saying, you already have that feature available.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me,
okay,
that link stuff and that Lambda stuff, that'll be a godsend. Because I have some lines that are just looking long because it's a bunch of link continuations.
Excellent.
Being able to break up like the parameters of function declaration, being able to break up the arguments you pass on to a function call, that's going to be a godsend for sure.
Yep.
And even like if lines, like if you have huge conditionals in your if statements,
right,
that's also a pretty big boon.
Because of the Lambda continuations, I'll have like something data function, the old link stuff. And I could have 5, 6, 8 in a row that is doing all kinds of mutation on an array or an AA. And suddenly I have a line that's 700 characters long, which even with my ultrawide is just a royal pain. And this will make that so much easier.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
I don't. One question I do have: I don't think you can break up function chains, right? I don't think you can break up like dotted get expressions. Like if you have something dot property and then you do a call, and then you do dot something else, you can't break those up.
No,
The only thing you can break is like if you have arguments within a function, you can break those, but you can't break like the chains.
Okay, well, cancel everything I just said.
There was list of those changes that Ben put on Slack, and I think dodging it can be broken. Yes.
I can try it real quick.
Yeah, I'm still on 15 or 15.2. I can't try it.
So we're saying, if I share my, should I share my screen?
You can do whatever you want, sir.
Well, I mean, there's no. I think you other people watching me typing is not great use of time. I'll see. I'll check on whether or not the dot thing works. While everyone else talks about something else, I'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, as I said it in the meeting, and for those who just joined, welcome. Today we don't have an agenda, so it's open forum. It's open season for topics. If you're looking to discuss anything and everything, do feel free. Mark talked about the line continuation feature in 15.3, which is now available in BrighterScript. I am actually curious to know what version it made it to. So I am going to just check that real quick.
Yes, 15.3 it should be in.
Yeah, but for BrighterScript, I think, for BrighterScript, it was 0.72. So if you're using that compiler, you should be good to use that. Although, yeah, as Mark pointed out, the formatter might need an update. So some gremlins might pop up if you try and break function calls or something like that. But yeah, you should be good to use it, or it should be supported.
Just can I do I was just wondering what people think is the right style for they opened up a can of worms talking about code style, but like if you were to have multiple line or the BS, the BrightScript plugin formatter formatting your code, what it should look like if you have multiple lines for a function declaration, for example.
I was actually thinking about that the other day, like what should be like the indentation rules that a formatter would apply and stuff like that. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think we should have lots of very heated arguments about it, whatever they are.
That's right.
Whatever it is you said, I disagree with it.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like, I will give you my 2 cents. Like the only thing I have a strong opinion on is when you break up function calls or function declarations, right? If you spread the arguments throughout multiple lines, then they should be one level from their parent expression, right? So if you do function call, open parentheses, and then new line, put an argument, put another argument in another line, and then you close the function in a separate line, then the arguments should be at least one level forward.
Don't we
Now, that is my opinion, but yeah, I would like to see what other folks.
I posted something in the meetups channel if people want to start arguing about it.
What you're describing, we already do with associative arrays that span multiple lines and arrays that span. I mean, it should just follow the same logic. We're used to it already.
Yeah, absolutely. That's yeah, what you're saying and what Mark posted in the channel are what
Luke said he
he's thinking
disagreed.
of.
He said it before I spoke, but
Yeah, just going back on the dots. I don't think the dots work.
Yeah, I remember vaguely about someone. I remember vaguely talking about someone about which type of expressions would be supported, and I think binary up expressions were the main one. So you can split up like an assignment expression where you have something equals, and then the expression that comes after. You can do variable 1 plus, and then you could put variable 2 on a different line. So those types of expressions you could break up, and you can break up grouped expressions as well. But the dotted gets. I don't think we're part of it, and you just confirmed that. So yeah. So it would be binary operations. It would be the function call and function declaration statements where you're listing the parameters. Trying to think if there was anything else that was considered in the BrighterScript compiler from the documentation, but I don't know if there was anything else.
Yeah, so you can break after an open bracket in a function call.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll actually just show what I did for that PR. So really quickly, I hope you can see my screen. You can see GitHub, right? And so so this was the PR that introduced that line continuation stuff in BrighterScript and arithmetic operators. So those would be supported. Boolean operators as well. Relational operators somehow also are supported because they're binary expressions, and then function call arguments. Inline like collections, like if you have an AA and an array, these were already supported. So there's really no change here. It's just these examples that I did through now. Hopefully that makes it clear for
and currently
whoever.
that's only allowed if you have minimum version 15.3 for the OS setting in your config.
Yeah, so if you're using the BrighterScript language server and you're using a standard BrightScript file and you're trying to do this sort of syntax, if you don't have minimum firmware version set to 15.3, it will actually give you an error. If you're using BrighterScript, then this is accepted, and there's no the transpilation will just be a single line, and that's that. So yeah, it's just this will only error if you're using BRS files, and you're not setting that minimum firmware version, which should be somewhere here in the releases. I'm just checking real quick. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I think it was Chris who worked, or rather Copilot, who worked on a minimum firmware version, excuse me, which is a string. And yeah, it worked for it. It worked to the first use case was ternary the optional chaining operator, which was introduced in 11.0. I'm fairly sure there was a follow-up PR that added it to this line continuation. There we go. This is the one. So if it's 15.3, and you're using BRS, then you should be good to go. So yeah. is a very nice quality of life feature, by the way. So thank you to the Roku engineers who worked on this. I don't know if you worked on it, Luke, but yeah.
No, it wasn't me, it was Ben Comby.
Thank you, Ben, on behalf of the community, I guess. All right. Any other topics people are interested in discussing?
Can't believe Naz is silent.
He's usually very vocal, yes. Today.
Well, I suppose I could maybe talk about a little bit of what we're doing over here at Enjoy Movies Your Way. And one of the things that we have is a small team, and we're trying to develop on all the different platforms. So we have Apple in Swift and Android Kotlin, web, Fire TVs, Vega OS, of course, Roku. And of all these different platforms, well, tvOS for Apple and Roku are kind of our nemesis. We don't like them very much. And no offense to any of you Roku guys. The main reason being is that they essentially don't allow for some of the technologies that make it really easy for small teams to be able to bring their services and apps to different platforms, like progressive web apps, for example. There's no WebKit. There's no way to be able to do rapid development on a single code base and be able to deploy that to all of your different platforms. So we don't like cloning our app over and over for all the different platforms, especially writing all that native code, retooling our small team of like 3 developers to have to jump from an advanced language like Kotlin or Swift or even JavaScript, HTML, and TypeScript to something like BrightScript has been a bit of a challenge for us. And so for us, what we've done is we did clone our app entirely for Roku and learned BrightScript, learned Scene Graph, learned all of the capabilities. But then we decided we didn't like that. So we built essentially a server-driven system. We thought about using component libraries for a long time because that would allow us to do a few things that we struggled with when it came to Roku, when it came to like rapid deployment of new features or bug fixes or whatever else. But well, we really like the idea of progressive web apps. So the idea is that your app is basically styled as if it looks native. It has a bridge to the native device for video playback based off of whatever player is available or any kind of human interface that you need, like remote controls or things like that. But the app itself is really just a website that is instantly deployed whenever you have changes, things like that. Of course, you have to deal with App Store policy issues when it comes to things like being able to, somebody might create an app that looks legit, and then if they don't have to go through an app review process, they might turn it into a gambling app or something like that. And then the app reviewers didn't have a chance to actually go through and review that first. But interestingly, for iOS platforms on the Apple App Store and also for Google Play Store, the Amazon App Store, and the Chrome Web Store, all those different stores have allowed our app to operate according to their policies, their review policies for years. And so when we got to Roku and tvOS, which don't have WebKits, we were forced to clone, like I said. So we decided to just create basically a server-driven interface that allows us to specify a single code base, and it just runs on all the platforms. So we actually don't develop in Roku anymore because we've already built our server-driven interface. And again, Roku has allowed that to operate on the Roku channel store for a couple of years now. And so I attend these meetings occasionally because I'm curious if there's any new cool feature in Roku or BrightScript or SceneGraph, but we really don't develop in it anymore, even though we have active apps on the Roku channel because we're using our server-driven system, which allows us to have the same exact app on all platforms in a single code base, and we don't have to dive into the different native languages, except occasionally to maybe add a feature or do something like that. So it's not something that we've actually made available to the outside world. We're calling it internally, we're calling it App Engine 1. It's a server-driven system, so we develop it all in the back end. Basically, the app boots up, it requests an endpoint, it sends down the definition for the layouts, the actions, the navigations, the animations, the transitions, all the behaviors in one bulk payload initially, and then as the app runs, it downloads more of the definition based off the different areas of the app that you're activating. A lot like you would get out of a progressive web app. But I'm thinking about actually open sourcing App Engine 1, and for developers that have small teams that don't want to develop in the native languages on all the different platforms, that want to be able to have an app and have it run consistently on all the different platforms. So that's sort of our story. I mean, I don't want to offend the Roku people, because Roku is an amazing tool. It actually is kind of incredible what these low power devices are capable of. We just don't develop in it a lot anymore because of our App Engine 1 capabilities. So I don't know, have you guys heard of any other groups that are trying to do similar things or have had interest in such a thing?
A lot of groups have their own model view system in Roku, the abstraction layer above BrightScript. One thing I've seen, and not picking on you guys by any stretch, when we come across libraries that are written by companies that concentrate in other languages, but they need to do something in BrightScript, so they assign their developers to, hey, quick, knock this out in BrightScript, learn it, familiarize yourself, do it. We end up with some interesting code when we try to integrate it in our apps, because, for someone like me that was around in the 70s and 80s, BrightScript is just kind of a jump back in history, the way things used to be. For somebody who wasn't programming in the 70s and 80s, BrightScript just seems probably, a little bit, no offense, but like the dark ages. But it's just the way programming used to be. But we'll get people where somebody that's never, was never around before object-oriented and all that, and the stuff they write is just, we'll call it unique. So that's one of the problems we have with, like what you were describing, where people that have trained in the high-level languages try to quick knock something out in BrightScript. We end up with problematic code. I've not heard of what you're describing specifically, where it's, you're basically, sending a definition and then just the app just runs off the definition. But I know a lot of companies have written, be it MVVM, MVC, they've written model view systems on top of BrightScript. Drawback of that is we're dealing with an Arduino level processor, and now you're running another level of abstraction on a processor that ain't that fast anyway. It's the only concern I've ever seen with that. And you've seen it in some channels where they're just a little sluggish. But what you're doing specifically, haven't seen the situation where people who are not BrightScript programmers try to knock something out in BrightScript. I've seen that go very, very badly, because BrightScript is such a unique animal. Because it is, like I said, a step back in time. It's like programming back in the early days of, be it early basics or Turbo Pascal or, things like that. So anyway, just my 2 cents.
Well, obviously this is working for Chad and his team. So, I wouldn't sell it short immediately.
It sounds really cool what they've
yeah.
done, because it sounds like they've created a definition system and then just a responder to the definition system.
So I assume you have some way of interacting with, channel store things. Do you interact, like the video player probably needed a lot of work to maybe you don't have ads, but interacting with RAF and all that sort of stuff, I assume?
Yeah, you're right. There are times when you have to make concessions for whatever platform you're on and say, okay, this is AV player, or this is video node, or this is EXO player. And but we just create basically like a common contract that all our players need to then have a custom implementation on that native platform. Similar with the IAP systems, you know, hey, we need to interact with the IAP so that a person can sign up and select their subscription plan or whatever else. And we just create common definitions, and then we map that to each of the individual platforms. And like with ads as well, yeah, we don't use RAF, although I'm a little confused about whether or not that means that we're not in 100% compliance with some of the App Store policies. We did use RAF for a while. Some of our implementations are a little bit unique to what we're doing, but we are using the playlist system, which I think RAF actually ends up using in the end. But we support both HLS and Dash, and we've had some trouble with early on with RAF, is that every time we'd come out of an ad break of non-encrypted content, it would re-request the DRM licenses and things like this, and it was just creating a lot of unnecessary license request activity for us. So we decided to just implement it a little bit differently, but we still do all the full tracking events and everything else that the RAF framework does. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely, introduce people to it a little bit further and kind of show, like you're right, Scott, about the performance. Performance on BrightScript was super tough. I mean, one thing we learned early on is that we can never really develop on any Roku device that has any real power. Only run it on like the cruddiest, like Philips TV, small Roku TV that you can find, because you're immediately going to think everything's working great, and then you go run it on one of those low power devices and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, you got to develop on the least common denominator.
Yeah.
You go get a ultra open or open accelerated. No, that's not a real world example of what you're doing.
Similarly with Fire TVs, make sure you develop on the lowest power Fire Stick, because those low power devices are really bad.
And what Roku's doing is incredible, for the money and for the CPU. But again, if you're used to an Apple iPhone CPU or, a Threadripper CPU and a machine running a website, you're talking a couple of dozens to thousands to one on power. Because again, the Roku CPU, we're not talking much more than a Raspberry Pi and an Arduino. They're not those things, but you're not talking what you're going to find in an iPhone 17 or in a PC or in most non-embedded devices. And it's too easy to get used to the fact that we're used to those high-power devices, and we can write these levels of abstraction to make life easier. But on Roku, you got to be real careful, because it can kill you real quick.
Oh yeah.
You always have to have one of these in hand, right? This is a little field.
So yes.
I think one of the worst in terms of. I think it doesn't even have OpenGL. So yeah, always keep one of these. I always keep one of these in hand in case I need to benchmark stuff. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, we learned that the hard way as well. We thought we were ready, and then we took another 2 months to refactor our system to deal with the low power devices. But yeah, I mean, yeah, good points, guys. And no, I mean, I think that I have been around a long time. I guess I've been doing this like 35 years now. In my mid 50s, done a lot of development. And you're right, Scott, this is like stepping back in time. Even when I was developing, I was writing in COBOL and PL1 and RPG back in the day. So,
well, we're ahead of RPG and COBOL and Fortran.
Fortunately.
Yeah, those were special. This is beyond the system 34, 36. But yeah, it's like being like, that's the best example I could come up with, is back before CodeView, before the Microsoft Visual Studio, you had the Turbo Pascal with the built-in IDE. Fantastic item in 1982. And when you take the Roku and then you add on the VS Code extensions that Brownlee, Chris, and many others have worked on, that's about where we are. Very effective, very functional. But if you grew up in the very high power, object-oriented, model view systems, all that, you're making a lot of assumptions that just are not true in this other paradigm that Roku lived in.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've seen some interesting stuff.
Well, and honestly, I mean, having developed in all these other platforms, and having to step down essentially into this world of Roku and BrightScript and stuff, I've actually found that I can do almost everything I want in one way or another. There is a way, with the exception, and I don't understand why this isn't there, any kind of a compression API. It's like, why is there not an access to at least gzip something? But for telemetry payloads or something, I mean, we do a lot of that and we need that, but we don't get that in Roku, and no WebSockets. It's like, what? But hey, like those things.
WebSockets, we just don't have TFS. But
Right.
I'll send you an LZW compression system in Roku. I suggest you never use it.
I wrote my own. It's worthless. It's too slow.
Yeah,
String manipulation.
Do people actually need compression then?
I need compression.
Who hands up if you need compression?
Definitely.
And
It's a valid use case if you need to deal with telemetry services, like you're sending a bunch of bulk data about your app and to a third-party telemetry service. Gzip does end up being a kind of like a must-have. We do have that indirectly because the Roku OS uses curl under the hood, so curl does have some level of compression. But yeah, if you want to roll anything custom, then it's not really feasible.
Roku's already capable of LZW decompression. We've seen it every time we sideload a channel. If the compression abilities are there, I have no idea if they're in the firmware or not. But exposing that would actually be useful. But yeah, like I said, I rolled my own. You rolled your own, Chad. They are unworkable. If you're compressing 10 or 20K, you're okay. If you're compressing a 1/4 megabyte, go get a cup of coffee. This is hideous. The string handling abilities and all that just aren't fast enough for any kind of realistic compression system. But yeah, like I said, Roku has decompression in it. Add us compression, expose it, we'd use it.
So is it just enough to turn on compression in curl? Is that all you need?
Yeah, I mean, that would be fine for me, except I mean, I understand it uses that under the hood, but we still can't, it's not exposed to us to use it. So.
Okay.
You do have an enable compression API available in whenever you use the raw URL transfer object.
For decompression.
That's only for receiving payload, not when sending.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I remember right, when you send it, even if you have that set, it does not compress.
No, I did the same thing, assuming it would work, and
yeah, if you
know
telemetry things like that, you're sending, and there are times compression would be very useful.
But what kind of big telemetry do you have? I wouldn't follow. Are you trying to record every single event? Like what is it that this multiplied by millions of users is unhandleable on the server side?
I can speak for Disney. The tracking we do is insane. Every keystroke, heartbeats on multiple analytics. We do a lot of tracking, especially you get into the real-time stuff on ESPN and all that. Because they're trying to really get it to the point eventually of real-time where they can tell commentators, quit talking about this, nobody cares. That's their end goal. A lot of telemetry data is being sent all the time.
So it's a good thing you're saying that Roku doesn't allow this.
No, we want compression. Even if it's just gzip, we want compression.
Think about your social responsibility.
I'm not sure where you're going with that.
Spying?
Well, it's happening on every other service. Not that that's necessarily but it's people are paying for this for the services that we're offering. So if the idea is that we can provide them a better service by understanding how they're using the service, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. Like on Peacock, we also do have a lot of analytics and telemetry. They're kind of considered two separate things because they're dealt with by multiple vendors. But we do have an extensive telemetry of how how well is the app behaving, right? We're constantly measuring stuff like how long did a page take to load, how long did a user take to make a decision, how stuff like that like performance indicators, and also when things go wrong, we do tend to do a lot of send a lot of diagnostic data to try and understand, okay, what went wrong? Was it like something that got inspired, or was it like a server-side issue or whatever? And a practical use case is that we're not sending like every event on in a single in its own request. Like we will batch stuff usually, and those batches can get quite large, right? So compression there would help massively.
With us, the other thing we do send is what they didn't do. If they bring up a screen of 30 tiles and they choose one, we want to know which ones they didn't choose, because we track that to know when to take, Lion King off the air. Nobody's watching her anymore. They're seeing it. They're not selecting it. We also do it in batches. But yeah, our telemetry data, and again, we're dealing with multiple endpoints because we have our external services too. And I'm not talking ad tracking. I'm talking behavioral tracking. We send a large amount of data constantly, and being able to compress that data would be super valuable. That's why I tried writing the LZW system. Man, it works. It just doesn't work realistically. You can't use it. But with the firmware, I know you guys can decompress if you can compress. The C# code running on the firmware, even on these processors, would still work just fine. It's just we can't do it in BrightScript. But yeah, we are sending, and I assume the other channels too, like Lewis said, a lot of telemetry data. And these
so you're saying that you'd want a RO gzip compression, or RO gzip?
Either that, or if we turn gzip on, the enable compression on our URL transfer, for it to be bidirectional. I'd love to have an RO gzip ability.
But consider, I'm not sure you really will benefit from sending data with HTTP requests, because you will need to batch it for the compression to work.
We do batch it. Lewis said the same thing. We do batch it.
How big are your batches?
They can go into, JSON is wordy. They can go into quite a few K.
How much?
They can, you can be talking batches that are in the dozens or 100K range.
But not you could have them. Do you have them?
We do have them, and this is JSON, which in a gzip world is insanely compressible.
That should work. That should work. But I just wanted to warn that, if you're sending frequently a lot of small payloads, there wouldn't be much payoff there, right?
You send a kilobyte and try to gzip it, you're probably doing more harm than good. You send JSON. XML is the same way. These are human readable. That means they are by definition verbose, and compression loves that stuff.
So to me, the question is what exactly to ask for, because let's say you're given something and then somebody else will come and say, no, I want this method of zip, right? Like, or I don't want zip. I want name some.
I understand where you're going.
Format. Somebody will say, you give them zip. They say, no, I want gzip.
Yeah, give an inch.
The other way around, right?
I understand that. Gzip, I believe, is zip based. The world right now is kind of zip based. I know that that's not a hard fast statement, but even having zip would be much better than the nothing we currently have. Gzip on the enable compression would be awesome. An ROZip utility would be beyond awesome. Having both would just be the best of all worlds.
So why don't you guys open requests from each of your respective team, from Peacock, from Disney, for whenever, like towards Roku?
Yes, you've seen me for 15 years put out my little wish list. It's been on them before. It's just never been an official request. This goes to my switch case statements.
But usually a request made it as a Jira on Roku's side.
Yeah, I have not done that. There are people above me that deal with that stuff. I'm kind of.
Then you should bubble it up. I mean,
that's fine.
It is a lot easier to get these things through if there's some evidence that anyone's going to use them.
Or the other thing is to bring it up in meetings like this when Luke is here.
Yeah, but I'm just going to go back to the people who make the decisions about where to spend the development resources, and I'll say, I've got this great idea, and they'll say, so who's going to use this? And I'll say, I don't know, some people I spoke to on a Zoom.
So there are people above you too, which say, hey, nobody has asked for it. Like from the partners, it hasn't come the official ways. You're just making it up, they will say.
Yeah. But if
I think if there's an official, if there's at least one partner saying we would actually use this, then that's a much stronger.
Disney, Peacock, Paramount, whatever will use it. We're kind of some heavy hitters. If you say John's local channel is going to use it.
If I say, oh, Peacock and Disney are absolutely going to use this, that's one thing. If Peacock and Disney could never actually be bothered to go and file a ticket, then they're obviously not that bothered about it. Is I think the response that I would get.
That's fair, and I've not looked at the Roku ticketing thing like that. I've never.
So yeah, put in a request, and if I can file a ticket which says, here are these 5 partners who all said this is what they'd like, and even better, this is the API that they said they'd like to see. That's even better, because if I just write a thing down now, I will write down the API, and then you'll turn around when we'll then put it into 15.4, and you'll say, yeah, that's not what we wanted.
Who's the 800 pound
that kind of compression
to them? It carries insane weight.
Sorry, what was that, Scott?
I said, who's the 800-pound gorilla partner that if we reach out to them and get them on board, that is the deciding factor?
I mean, if Disney were to say, we really need this, then I'm sure that would be pretty useful. But just having anybody saying, it doesn't need to be Disney, it needs to be some real partners, not just me, because I don't do this for a living. I don't write. I'm not on your side of the Zoom meeting. So not me. And somebody said, yes, we would actually use it, and we care about it enough to have written a feature request. And this is the API that we're looking for, not that thing that Luke thought he was going to write up. That's
so the stuff that you guys had as a need, it would help. Also, our discussion here may help to formulate what is being asked for. So more than one partner to ask for the same thing, right? So you said you want to batch bunch of events from telemetry and be able to zip it into a file that can be uploaded, right? Something like that. It's a good business use case. And if multiple people do the same request, it will, somebody will notice it.
Yeah, and it's not only a matter of, oh, look, there's always people who need it, but it's also all these people who need it, and here's what it is that they're trying to, here's why they need it, and here's what it is they actually want. This is the API.
Yeah, I will admit from the Peacock side, compression has never been like at the top of our radar. It has been discussed, but it hasn't been discussed significantly to the point of, okay, let's throw in a feature request. We've always had like other priorities, right? I've got one that comes to mind. I won't say it here, but yeah, I've been working with Luke on that. But yeah, it's definitely a good tactic that you're suggesting, Nas, and maybe Scott will liaise offline. How can we open feature requests?
Yeah. These would be two. One would be to enable compression. The other would be an RO zip. But yeah, I'll find out how to do that. Put them in. It'd be nice.
So the most transparent one would be if can do it in raw URL request, because that way the server wouldn't even know that it was compressed. I mean, the server will know, but the server already, I assume, I haven't used it. I assume that server already welcomes gzip compression on payload.
I think you can turn on, you can negotiate that you'll accept compression, but which will mean that it'll send you compressed content and curl will decompress it for you. I don't think that you can arrange that the body of the of your request gets compressed.
Yeah, right now Roku doesn't do that.
That's also not a thing in libcurl. So we're just under the hood. We're just using libcurl. I don't think you can say to libcurl, please compress all of my payloads that I send.
Yeah, you need to negotiate with the server. Now, the server actually needs to handle that properly. So it would have to be like an opt-in thing.
But I think even then, the compression is the server's going to send you some stuff compressed, but I guess it would have to have negotiated it from the other end, maybe. I don't know. Don't know how that works. Maybe it is simply a matter of setting that one option at both ends, and then it all just works after that. But I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see one other, I'd imagined other use cases for an RoGzip type of object where we could possibly have a little bit more data in the cachefs or something like that than what we can hold now. But those are kind of fringe ideas that we never played with because we didn't have the capability to start with. But for us, if we just had it in the RO URL transfer, the ability to specify in the header the content encoding of the gzip or something, that then we could post the payload as a compressed payload, that would be huge. But I mean, either way, if you did it that way, or if you opened up the RoGzip, it would actually have the same capabilities, because we would just associate the well, for us, what we would probably do is stage it to the file and then use the post from file thing that allows us to then specify the header and just send up the gzipped payload.
Right.
And then the other thing, Scott, if you're adding some feature requests, please also add sockets. I don't understand why there's, I mean, I built my own socket library, but again, I don't have TLS capability, which is also annoying. But and I know that Roku has socket capability because I found the library at one point, but it stopped working. So I don't know what they did.
There's an RO socket to do UDP and datagrams and all that, because I've used it before way back when.
Do you mean WebSockets or sockets?
Yeah, I was saying WebSockets. There is an RO WebSocket something, and I got it working, but then it stopped working, and it had TLS support at that time, but it wasn't officially documented, so the
problem with WebSockets is not that you cannot write it yourself, which you could. The problem is that you cannot write by yourself secure WebSockets. It's very complicated to write the TLS layer.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what we do is we did write our own sockets, and we send up basically well, we use HTTP to post to a Redis server, and then we send a socket signal, because the payloads, again, we don't want to send up huge payloads over the sockets, and they're not secure. So we post to an HTTPS endpoint, stage it in a Redis server, send the code up to our server, say, go get it, retrieve it from Redis server. So we still can have our socket capabilities, but we have to go through all this these hoops, when all we really have to do is have a secure WebSocket. But both of those, gzip and WebSockets, would be great if we could get that in there at some point in the future.
And Nas, you've known me for years. You know I'm going to throw a switch case request up there because I just do it every time I get a chance. Just too many if else, if else, if else, if else's.
Well, another huge thing that we've bumped into with BrightScript is your stack overflow problem. You have a very limited call stack capability, which is kind of ridiculously limited, but we get around it, but it's like super annoying.
The only time I've seen that is trying to dump associative arrays to where it becomes a recursive routine. And you put in stuff to watch for circular references, but even with that on a complex array, which you don't create in Roku, but you can receive from other services sometimes. And I've bumped it, but not heavy, I think once.
So the problem is that the stack until recently was fixed size, and not the depth of recursion, but it just gets exhausted. So the problem was that when you functioned with a lot of parameters, then they exhausted faster.
Yeah, I think I found that too, Naz. It actually depends on the size of the parameters to the functions.
So what happens is there's like I said, there's a stack, and it's pretty small. I think it's 1,000 deep, 1,024 deep, and that includes what, like Nas was saying, all the parameters, so you can get through it fairly quickly. And I did make an attempt to increase it in, I think, 15.1, I think it was, and that actually worked really well, except that it turned out that there was a channel that had some was crashing in an observer, in a field observer, and it was crashing in a function that was catching the exception. The exception being that the stack was too deep. And it was a recursive function. It would get to the bottom. It didn't know it was recursive. It would get to the bottom and then kind of recursively wind up, catching the call stack, catching the exception using try catch at each level, yeah, and gradually work its way back up. And when the maximum stack depth was really short, although it was annoying, it would just burn a few seconds during channel launch. And when we'd increased the stack depth to a lot more, because it was order n squared, it ended up being sort of 100 times slower, and so the channel never launched. So we've had to turn that off while we sort of stop and have a think about it, because obviously there's one channel that's got this, then you don't know how many other channels are relying on the fact that the maximum stack depth is quite short. However, in 16.0, the plan is to make backtracing go loads faster anyway, and so therefore the problem should just go away. And so so this particular channel will still take a second or so to start up, but they won't notice anymore. And everybody else will just be much faster, and then we can turn the stack size up.
Well, God forbid you could have contacted that app and asked them to fix it.
Well, we could have asked them to fix it, but then you don't know. Once you realize that there's all these channels out there, how many channels are there out there? How many other channels are there out there that's relying on this? That's the
Less than you're afraid.
Yeah, then we're afraid.
They don't rely on it. You should understand. I mean, we talked about this bug. It's such an incredible accumulation of circumstances that this thing even works. They don't even know that the function is crashing. And the only reason it's not crashing the whole app is because this is in call func or something like that, right?
In an observer.
Thread, it would have killed the app.
Yeah, call func would have actually stopped it, but it's in an observer, so it doesn't. It's in an observer and it's wrapped in try catch, so it never gets noticed.
Right. It's an observer try catch which calls them. Yeah, this is very obscure. I mean, I understand. We couldn't imagine this will happen, but need to make assessment on probability of this happening. There may be another app like that, or there may not be at all.
Let me throw out a request based on what you just said and see if anyone thinks this is worthwhile. If you are going to dramatically speed up the call stack, there's times it's nice to get the call stack for debugging information so you can kind of post progress of where you are, or for logging to be able to say I was on this line of this routine. To have a function where I could just ask for the call stack, no exception, nothing like that, just have another function that
That's pointless. That's pointless because it's not, you can write that function in 2 lines with try catch. That function
and I do, with the idea that a throw is,
what's the problem?
A try has cost, a throw has cost. If we
No,
could
the reason, hold on. The reason they have cost is because they're badly implemented, so to speak, currently.
Okay.
When they become better implemented, everything will speed up. The catch will speed up, and your magical function that you dream will speed up equally. So they will be on par. There will be no reason to create a special function because it wouldn't be any faster.
Okay. Well, I was just assuming that internally you already have the call stack function. It was just a question of exposing it. But
I mean, we do have a call stack function, but the problem right now is that it's really slow. You can get to it using try catch, but it's still really slow. But after this change in 16.0, it should be much faster.
okay. Because I do have a routine, a location routine that literally fakes a throw in a try just to get all the information I need to say right now, because I back it up a couple of levels. So I get rid of my throw and all that and says, okay, when I asked for this, I was in this routine on this line number. And it just, like I said, for logging purposes, is kind of nice.
No,
Yeah, we did the same once on Peacock. We
it wouldn't
actually
matter
shipped
if you're
it.
using try catch. If it gets sped up, it will get sped up.
All right.
Yeah.
Same way.
I was just
Yeah,
saying we
so-
actually had this kind of thing in production once on Peacock, and we reverted it quickly because that's when we learned Crash is really slow. So, and I was just logging stuff for telemetry, like, oh, something went wrong in the app. Let's
Okay.
log where we were, and let's log the message and whatnot. Let's put it in a nice
What
bundle
is
for
worth-
telemetry. So yeah.
For what it's worth, in my code is only in dev. I have much higher logging in dev and QA than I do in production. So in production, that whole routine is absolutely forbidden. But in dev and in QA, our logging has insane detail. Because the QA people will be like, I was doing this and it crashed. And it's like, send me the log so I know exactly what went wrong. And the call stack will tell me where it crashed, but it won't tell me where they went to get to that point. And by having those, routine line number in the previous, I can see kind of what they went through to create this. Especially when I'm chasing something intermittent, or it's like, if they scratch their right elbow with their left arm and Tuesday and all that type thing. So yeah, this location routine of mine is absolutely blocked. It starts out with like a if is dev is false. Exit. But yeah, in logging, it's nice. Now, if we're going to speed her up to where it throws just as fast anyway, great. Then that kind of makes my question, pointless.
You can make it in production. You can use it in production.
Yeah, I do not, because I can't get the logs from production. I can't, some guy crashes Disney. I'm just going to hear we had a crash. I'm not going to be talking to, John Ralph out in, Boise, Idaho, telling me, oh, here's the log it accumulated. It's just not like that. So I have no use for this in production as I've currently coded. I could make it more telemetry while I send that stuff. But, until we get gzip, I don't want more telemetry.
Speaking on that, though, Scott, one thing that we do with our telemetry is that we stage our telemetry on cachefs in a very small buffer. And that way, and then later, if our app did crash and on reboot, if we discover there was unsent telemetry in cachefs, at least we can send that so we know where we were at last.
Right. And I've had like that. We don't have it currently, but we've done things like that. Just cachefs is one of those things that's great when it works. You cannot count on it. And you can
and it won't survive a device reboot either.
Yeah. And you can do things in the registry, but the section of code I work on, I'm allocated about 500 bytes of registry. I don't have a whole lot to work with. And again, without a zipping function, I'm guessing how much of I can put in registry to end up using 500 bytes of registry. So if it's JSON, I figure it's going to compress about 80% down. I can probably use, a few K.
So that's another reason for using compression, is to be able to compress your registry data.
Which it does anyway. We just don't know what's compressing where.
Actually, the opposite, because if he compresses the data, then he's killing the ability of registry to compress it.
Right.
So actually, he shouldn't be compressing.
And I'm not, but I have to guess how much of the registry I'm using. I have to make an educated guess.
Yeah.
That's
And that
Working with the registry is always very finicky. You don't know how much you're consuming, and you have to really be careful about how much you're storing.
But even with that, I could not store crash logs in the registry because of my limitations. Cachefs works. It's just unreliable. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's pretty inventive, because consider cachefs is unreliable, but statistically looking at it, when there are thousands of apps crashing, the logs will survive on some of them.
Yeah, and unreliable is the wrong word. Unguaranteed is a better word. Cachefs works as it's supposed to work. Just there are conditions when it will be purged. Therefore, you are not guaranteed you'll get access to it. So unreliable is just the totally wrong connotation. It's reliable, not guaranteed.
Does TMP survive between 2 runs of the same app? No?
I don't believe so. No.
I don't think so. I think TMF clears when you close your app, if I remember right. Been a long time. I used to use it for ad stitching way back when, before we had the option. When I would create my own 3 U8s and put them on temp, and then use a socket server to feed them to the same device it was coming from. So, you know, using discontinuities, I could have one video with ads. That's a long time ago. I think that problem's long resolved.
So do you need a dedicated slot for somewhere to put some data that you could then upload in the event of a channel crash? And you could then stop using cachefs. So maybe that would be useful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but what would be the size of that, and how would you make sure that it's used for telemetry only?
So you'd make sure it's only used for telemetry by having an API where you can put it in, and then the system will then upload it to the endpoint of your choice on a crash. That could work. And then, what was your other question? How do you make sure? So that then stops you using it for anything else. You probably, I guess you'd also want to compress it, wouldn't you?
If it becomes too large, then yeah, compression would be.
Yeah.
And registry's kind of weird like that. If I have a device with 12 channels loaded and I have a device with 400 channels loaded, either way, they all get the same amount of registry allocated to them, which means on the first device, there's just a bunch of wasted space.
I can see that being actually. Sorry, I can see that being. Yeah, sorry, go on, Scott.
No, that was it. Just it having a fixed cap regardless of device usage. It seemed like a conservative approach that leaves a lot of flash RAM. With flash RAM, it's not. It's a cycle.
Most devices have got loads of space these days.
Yes.
And so I think you're limited to. I can't remember what the limit is. It's pretty small, isn't it?
32K compressed. Last I looked.
Is it actually compressed?
The registry, according to the documentations, the registry compresses. It used to be 16K, and you guys upped it to 32K sometime back, but it's always been listed as compressed. That you guys do compress the registry, which makes me think you do have a zip compression system available to you.
I'm pretty sure we have a gzip.
Of course there is.
Somewhere.
Yeah, it's compressed, and if I remember right, 32K compressed. I'm going off memory here.
Yeah, it is compressed, and there was even a function that tries to guess how much space remains. I don't know if that function got published. In fact, I think it got published, but by definition, it cannot be very good. Yeah,
and you get into the thing, if I store a novel, a 30K novel, it's not going to compress much. It will. So if I store 30K of JSON, it's going to compress dramatically. So we kind of guess what we're doing compared to the effect it'll have on the registry, like we were discussing a few minutes ago. It's absolute guesswork.
But what you said, I don't agree, because you said, oh, depending on how many channels you have installed, the registry hypothetically could allow different sizes. Yeah, it could, but how do you know how many apps will the user have? The same app that you have will be installed on devices that have 3 apps and that they have 300 apps. So you have no control over it. You're writing for everyone.
I mentioned the scenario. I have no solution to that scenario. So you're right. I mentioned it, but I didn't have a recommendation on what to do with it. It just seems like on a lot of devices we're wasting registry.
And no, you're not wasting it, actually. This 32K, it doesn't always use 32K. If you don't use registry, you're not using any space on the device.
But if I wanted to use 200K on a box that has very few channels, and I have this massive chip sitting there, just probably old Toshiba chip, unused essentially, but I'm hit by a fixed 32K limit. I don't know a solution. I mean, the 32K limit is probably the way it has to be. A limit of some value, but it treats every box as being the same situation, saturated with channels.
I think so. I mean, the limitation was imposed not because there was no space, but because if there was no limit, apps will exhaust it. Somebody will say everything there.
Right. No, there has to be a limit. I was questioning.
500 meg of registry.
Yeah, I was questioning the limit. I don't know. I mean, I could look up the chip number, and I don't know how big this chip is and the cycle counts and all that. But I assume the 32K is based on some arbitrary number of, okay, this is a ridiculous number of channels. Hopefully people won't go past it and they all use the registry. And I don't know if that channel count is 50 or 650. I just don't know the details of the chip. I haven't looked it up. I don't even know if they all use the same chip. Ultra may use a completely different chip than a stick. I don't know.
It's not calculation like that. It's more like Bill Gates, 640K should be enough for everyone.
How'd that work out?
It worked out for 5 years or something. I don't know.
Now we can't do a Hello World app on Windows in 640K.
Not if you use Electron, no.
Anyway. That was just me talking, the registry cap thing. It's not a request to fix something. It is some guesswork on our part on how much.
But I'm liking it. I still have to commend the inventive use of cachefs.
Yeah.
To save something that survives. Till then, yeah, I'm much impressed. Yes.
And like you said, if you're chasing crash logs, a percentage of them surviving still accomplishes the purpose. If I put out a bad update, 3 million people crash ESPN, which I'd be shot at for anyway if I did that. But I don't need 3 million crash logs. I need 300 to find out where the problem is. The people who survived me after they, hit me with a firing squad. But you know what I mean.
You need one to troubleshoot the problem, but you need sufficient signal to notice that there is a problem. Yes.
To realize it's not a fluke.
Yeah.
Somebody's power didn't happen to glitch at the wrong instant.
All right. We are 12 minutes past 8 p.m. I'm not sure how long we want to keep going for, but I think this is a good spot to end it. I think some very productive discussions have happened. And yes, some really good ideas for feature requests as well. So yeah, anything else anyone wants to add before we start it off?
Luke's up there thinking to himself, these guys are never going to be happy. As much as we give them, they just want more. And he'd be right.
I'm just writing a quick channel to check that compression thing. I just can't find any code where it does any compression.
I mean, they kind of made their own bed here. I mean, they invented their own language, so it's kind of their fault. So
that is true. All right. I think we are good to end here. Thank you, everyone, for joining this month's community meetup. And recording will be posted sometime soon. And yeah, we'll have another one of these next month.
All right. See y'all later.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.